Yeah, so here we are. We're below zero outside. It's February, and hard to believe all of that. Now I'm wiping my nose. This is all stuff that you're not supposed to do on film. And I did this talk a couple of times now. One, the battery ran out, and two, um, I didn't look at the screen very much. And that's a really hard thing for me to do because I was taught, to be humble and to kind of, look down. And so it's not my normal um, way that I would do, my presentations. This is going to be a little longer story. It has to deal with, I will have my notes because my memory, I have to refresh sometimes and think about things through and through. So I wrote it down a little bit. This story is about, and of course Lucy's here, so you can watch her lick her toe. Don't lick your toe. She's split her nail, and so we're having a battle. I don't want to put a cone on her. Anyway, this is story is about 1995, January. It's about the wolf reintroduction into Yellowstone. It's a very serious story, really, because a lot of times people will say, "Oh, you did the reintroduction of the wolf into Yellowstone." Fewer now, over the years, but I didn't really do anything to. I got a split moment, and I got to pray up there, and there were so many prayers coming that way, with the music from the singer. It just brought it all into the Lamar Valley and spread out. That's all I did. I didn't do hours and hours of research that the scientists did or field study. Those are the people also I was including in those prayers, as well as the ranchers, because they were, it was an unknown for them, and I felt bad that their industry was set on live animals. Anyway, the story started, and I was living in Bozeman. There's one other thing I want to say too, is that some of the people have requested not to use their name, and so I won't mention their names. But other people's names, they do need to be recognized. And like I said, I was living in Bozeman, and I had been protesting for the buffalo that were coming out of the Yellowstone Park and being slaughtered by the state of Montana. And I had been doing that for years and years and years, and there's documentation if you so request it, because people lie. But look in the Bozeman Chronicle around the 1994 or 5, somewhere there should be some articles about me protesting. And I worked, with the Buffalo Field Campaign before it was a Buffalo Field Campaign, when it was Buffalo Nations, and then actually before it was Buffalo Nations, and it was just Mike Meese. Anyway, I was all documented at the time that I was, pro-animal for, being in Yellowstone, especially the buffalo. And over the year or so, we had been hearing the possibilities of wolves being reintroduced, that was a plan that actually was in motion and had been for quite a bit of, for quite a long time. While I lived in Bozeman, I was a hairdresser, and I owned my own salon. And one of my clients, my wife and I, we had clients that worked in Yellowstone, and they'd come in, periodically and tell us, a little about their life and what it was like to live up in Mammoth or Gardner or wherever. And my client one day, it was probably in the summertime, '94. And my client came in, and I was giving him a haircut, and we got talking about the buffaloes, and then on into the discussion were the wolves, and being reintroduced into Yellowstone. And he's mentioned something along the lines of, that must be really difficult, for a wolf to be in Canada and then be relocated to a place that's totally foreign to him. Must be, real difficult to get it reestablished. And gosh, I thought I heard the compassion for the animal in what he was saying, and I agreed with him. And we were talking about, is there something we could do, for the buffalo or for the wolves? And prayer is a really good thing. Prayer is really a good thing, and that's basically, I said, we could go up and have a prayer, or we could do a ceremony up there, if that's something that the park was open for. And so that's where I also have to say this, we were having this wonderful discussion about wildlife and freedom and compassion for the animals. And gosh, I hated to charge him for the haircut, because I was actually, that was what he was there for. Anyway, over the years, a lot of people came like that. So Dan Rhodes went back into, his position in the park, and I think he did some field work, or he did some research for it, and actually opened up a pathway for me to visit with the park. And so we had some exchange. I know there were some security issues that came up, and so we submitted to that. I submitted to that. And I invited the superintendent to come over to the house to have dinner. And so he did. He came to the house. There was my wife, and there was the singer, and it was a wonderful evening, and talking about why I wanted to do this. And I said, in my life, I've watched things go away. I said, when I was really little, my dad worked in Portland, and we were invited as a family to come up to watch the men fish for salmon. They were netting them at Shalilo Falls, and though I was young, I don't remember much about it except the salmon. In the next year, the Shalilo Falls would be buried in water for the rest of eternity, they thought. But I think that's an illusion, because I think the dam that was built that flooded the Shalilo Falls will probably fail before, at some point in history. And the Shalilo Falls, I think, will come back and see the sun again. And that's basically my attitude was, I've seen and felt so much of this in my life, and I would just, be honored to be part of something where it's actually being redone, reestablished, reintroduced. And I guess he, he liked what I said. I know I had to get references and send those in. And at the time I was I had a Sundance group. We were Sundancing all over, trying to save the planet and different things. And we were just lovely people. And I'm looking at the birds that come in for seeds I put out. Anyway, the Sundance group was really interested. They'd always been compassionate, had gone with me to, protest the buffaloes, and so they were very environmentally, driven. And so it came down to, after the superintendent came, he pretty much said, okay, who's coming, and I was restricted to a few. Actually, I was restricted to 3. And I thought, okay, well, and I let the group know, but the group was very lovely, and they prayed hard, and I knew, and I knew in advance they would pray all the time we were up in the park doing this, so I wasn't too concerned. And so the superintendent turned us over to a man named Tom Tankersley, who's passed away now, but he was great representative for us in relationship to the park. And I think we were restricted too, because so many times groups show up and there'll be like 100, and that would not be controllable. This needed to be a controllable group, in my perspective, because of security. And they did a check on me, and I was clean, and so they'd let me, I picked a couple of people, my wife and the singer. And so Tom Tankersley gave me an itinerary of the events that would happen, as in, the wolves would be captured. They would be given physicals, inspected, checked out, and all. And then they would be flown into Great Falls through, customs. And then from customs they would be driven to Mammoth, to Yellowstone Park. And so Mr. Tankersley said, he'll give me a 2 weeks heads up, because they were not announcing when those dates were going to be, because so many of these events always have somebody who's upset, and the threats were real threats, violent threats, and so security was tight, and we just went back to work and went about our days, and tried to stay out of looking at the newspaper and the events that were happening, because the Cattle Association was real upset. They were, lawsuits. So when we got the heads up that the wolves were coming, I think there were 7. When the wolves were coming, I notified the singer who lived in another town, and I said, now they'll give us a 24 hour, they're going to give us a heads up, and we need to go, be ready to go at any minute. And then the Cattle Association a judge put a kind of a block on the wolves, and the wolves were then stuck in Great Falls. And from what I was being told, and the news, they weren't being fed or given water. Well, that's maybe gossip, and I hope it is. But anyway, we finally got the call that okay, all the media is here. It's a frenzy down in Gardner. Do you still want to do this? Yes. And so Tom says, okay, well, come meet me at such and such a place in the evening. Of course, in January, evening is 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Anyway, we met the singer in Livingston. We came across from Bozeman. We met the singer in Livingston and at the subway for some food, and he brought along his girlfriend at the time. We didn't know that. We had been restricted to only 3 people. But, I kind of like, the wolves and the buffaloes and everybody else up there is, somebody's coming in, another animal's coming into our neighborhood. I looked at this as the same, the singer brought his girlfriend, fine, let's go, we'll see what happens. Maybe you'll stay out, maybe you get in, I don't know. anyway, we drove up and we met Tom Tankersley at a rendezvous because everything had to be secure, so we didn't give out locations, and we knew where we were going to meet by previously established location. Anyway, we met with Tom, and the decision was we'd all go in one vehicle. And so we all loaded up in my vehicle. It was a van, and my wife she drove. And she was a better temperament and a better driver than me in that condition. It was slippery, ice-packed roads. It was below zero. We went from Gardner up to Mammoth. Mammoth was wall-to-wall media, RVs with satellite dishes on them. We had to check in at the, I think it was at the, he kept referring it to the headquarters, but I think it might have been the museum or the tourist area there. I can't remember, but he said all of the media is upstairs, and we're, if you want to go upstairs and meet with the media, it's, now's the time. And I said, well, we haven't done anything, and so let's go. And we went under the shadow of darkness because the media at that moment just broke for dinner. I bet it was about 7 o'clock. They broke for dinner, and so we were able to go right through where they had been walking, and they never caught us. And so we loaded up in my van and we took off. And the night was wonderful, starry, lots of stars, and very, very cold, very, very cold. Buffalo on the road as we went into the Lamar Valley, and driving very cautiously. We got over to the Lamar Valley, and out in the snow there was a big sled. It was horse-drawn, a big sled. And so Tom says, that's the sled they're going to come in right here to this parking area. They're going to unload the wolves if they get through, because now they were considering that now the wolves' lives were in jeopardy because of the amount of time that had been since they'd eaten and drank. And so he said that's where they'll unload. They'll put them on the sled, and then they're going to take them back to an enclosure. And so we jumped out, and gosh, you could just I got out, I could just feel all of the people's focus coming into that valley, and we ceded down that sled, and my wife represented women, Sundance women, and prayed, and the singer sang the song, and off in the distance there, way off, you could hear this coyote, singing with the drum. It was, like I said, it was magical. No magic, this was magical. It was just beautiful. And we were just beginning to stop, and two cars came from different directions, parked there, and Tom Tankersley went because we had to have a permit to be out there, and he came back. He said that it must have been just when you guys started they released the wolves from Great Falls, and they're on their way. And I said, well, that's exactly great. That's exactly what we wanted. And you know, that moment was a release of all these people that had put all these hours and hours of time into this project on both sides. Unfortunately, I was on the side of the wolf, which may have been in the middle of the sides. But as it turned out, you know, it was a beautiful night. We then went back to our, you know, locations where we live, back to our homes, and I got a call about 8 o'clock in the morning that the media wanted us to come back and do a ceremony just for the media, and I said, no, I didn't do that. I did that for the wolves and all those people and all those animals. I said I didn't do it for the media. And I guess I pulled the wolf on you, sneaking around. And they hung up. The next days, you know, they were just phone calls, people calling, people wanting to know. And I had to say, you know, I didn't do anything. I went there, and it was I got to experience something for everybody, and it's never been the same. It's never been the same. The impact in the Lamar, you know, is significant now of people, and they're teaching the wolves not to be afraid of humans. So after that, that night, we were then called, because the wolves wouldn't come out, and so we were called to go and sing a song, and I said, well, we'll just adopt them, because I know they're lonely and miss their families. So we'll adopt them. And I fed them with a cracker from my grandmother's hospital room that I had taken, that she said I needed. And so I gave it to the wolves in the adoption ceremony. It was publicized well in the Billings Gazette. So, you know, that's recorded. Then I began to study, the more we went on. We went and did the second year. The request came from the superintendent that we were to be with the main group, and that our prayers and stuff would be open to the media. And so we agreed. And that was put on a lot of different places. Our photographs showed up in lots of different places, and lots of people used us for promotions. It was an interesting time about, you know, being famous. You know, some people hate you and some people love you. And then there's all this silence between, and you don't know where they stand. But at that time, the wolf, I thought it was worth it, and I continued to go back to the park for the buffaloes, and I pray for the wolves at the same time. The buffaloes are my family, and we feed the wolves. So I had to say this story because I know a lot of people don't know it, and other people, they make things up, I guess, but it wasn't an easy thing. For me, it wasn't easy. It was a destiny thing for me, because it brought me to a point where I needed to realize I needed to know more about wildlife, about the environment, about the issues of wildlife and how wildlife is treated. So the wolf reintroduction for me, you know, it was part of, you know, bringing back the salmon that are being continually, you know, reduced. Can we turn that around? Can we bring back the rhino or the elephant or the giraffe? Can we bring back these animals and put them in places that they are just safe from us. Whether they battle amongst themselves, that's their deal. But they don't need the complication. Human impact has always been, a tragedy for me, even my own impact. And they have always guided me to do more support for the animal. And that's what I did with the blessing of the buffaloes, or the blessing of the wolves in Yellowstone in '95. I just took a lot of people's works and a lot of people's dreams and a lot of people's prayers, and I released them in the Lamar Valley. That was an easy thing. All the work that was done, it needs to be recognized. There's a lot of people that stand up and say, I'm this and I'm that, but underneath them there's about 30 more people that actually did the work, in my opinion. So this is the story of my trip to wolf introduction. I have to say, my hat's off to my wife and my hat's off to the singer. They're no longer involved in the things that I do, but that's their destiny, and that's good for them. What I do know is at that moment, it all came together, and as Sundance people, the women were represented, the men were represented, the song and the beauty of the prayer at the moment. And that's really the depth of our relationship that we should find for animals. We should find ourselves standing in prayer with them versus, hunting them. Anyway, enough of that. That was the wolf introduction, January 12th, 1995. Thanks for listening. Bye.